Part two of Senator Tim Lombard. I made a video earlier. I hope you've seen it. I hope you've seen it. We're having great fun with these idiots. Anyway, Senator Tim Lombard is now going to have a bill put through the Dáil to neutralise my efforts to make him comply with EU law, and he hasn't got a hope. Now, one of the things he mentions, and I didn't go into in my earlier video because it would make it too long, is about the length of time an appeal. Now, just to explain to you, there's the ESPO Convention on Transboundary Plans or Programmes. So if the government has a plan and programme, it has to notify adjoining jurisdictions. The second thing is there's the public participation part of the SEA directive, and that's built on the Aarhus Convention, which is in law in Ireland and signed in by 2012. But they didn't actually adopt it into Irish law, but it's in the directives anyway, so there's no need to plead it. That's the justification for the SEA directive, that there's an international agreement that there be a proper assessment of public plans or programs, because in times past, especially in old dictatorships and communist regimes, that bulldozed down something that was 5,000 years old. I mean, you could get a communist regime in a place like Ireland and say that Newgrange was a bad influence on the Irish people and it was promoting nationalism, and they'd bulldoze it. And this is what the SEA directive was designed to prevent. And so it ties into habitats, and it ties into areas of special conservation and all of that. And we have an area of special conservation off the coast of Holland, and there was a ship there when electric cars went on fire, and there was great fear for it, but lucky enough it seems to be under control. So the laws make quite a lot of sense. They're not bad laws, even the EU, and I'm not a big fan of the EU, not entirely against it either, and keep me powder dry on that for the moment and hold me counsel. But the point is, that's the law, and it was brought into force as a result of various referenda in Ireland, because Ireland's constitution forbids anyone else ruling Ireland except the Irish people. But you can give that right away, which they did in the Lisbon and all the European Union referenda in Ireland. Okay, now so what he's complaining now is that if I make an objection to a housing thing in Cork, because there's no SEA, it'll go to the High Court. Some of the judges in the High Court are nobbled. Some of them will not go against the government. That's the way it is. I get stick here from Truth Please. Oh, you were miserably failed. That's all right. This is only part of the battle. You don't win every battle. It's who wins the war that's important. And so the next thing is then because of the workload on the Supreme Court in Ireland, the top court, the Court of Final Appeal, they brought in the Court of Appeal, which is an intermediary court between the High Court and the Supreme Court. And it would look, in the case of the Friends of the Irish Environment, that it's nobbled too. So Senator Lombard might say, oh geez, we appoint him, you know. But it's a different thing with the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court, if it gets it wrong, it could bring it under the ire of the EU. If it rules that the SEA directive doesn't apply, it could cause the EU Commission to bring pressure. And also it would set a precedent in law which would be faulty, and which could be under the doctrine of, is it stare decisis? I think it's the doctrine of stare decisis, that they'd have to reverse it again. And they don't want to do that. They want to be consistent. Now, if you read the SEA directive, it's clear there has to be an environmental report carried out with public participation, and they have to allow for judicial review, and they have to show why they're doing it, where they're going to do it, what the environmental impact of it will be. And they have to also study under the Aarhus Convention, which it is based on, the do-nothing approach. What happens if we do absolutely nothing? Which is the right approach, of course, but that's neither here nor there. Now, so what will happen? It'll go to the High Court, which will probably, at the moment, side with the state. It'll go to the Court of Appeal, which already, in the case of the Friends of the Irish Environment, will side with the state. It'll then go to the High Court, to the Supreme Court. There's 9 judges on the Supreme Court, and on a case like this, there'd be 7 sitting. That's to allow one of them to be an absent or whatever. That's all right, no problem. In the case of the Friends of the Irish Environment, it ruled it had to go to the European Court. But the thing is, you're talking about a year from you go into the High Court till you get to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court refers it to Brussels, it could be 2 years. That case, all our cases that are there pending are going on an awful long time. That what happens in the European Court of Justice is not like an advocate court. The Advocate General reads all the documents. He gets back to each party, or she gets back, whichever it is, and checks out, makes sure everything's right. So he might even ring up and say, right, this part here I don't understand, and gets that clarified until he has it right, that he's right with all the parties, that the issues are clear and presentable. And when he has agreed on all that, he then provides a report, which is usually followed by the court itself, and the highest court is the Grand Chamber. And that's what happened in the case of C-2419, which you can easily get by searching European Court online, C-2419. And in that case then, the Advocate General found that the guidelines for wind farms in Belgium were never assessed, and that went on to the court, and the court ruled that they were illegal, and that they had to be torn down. This has put the skids under the whole energy industry. But it also means that if they build the housing under government plans or programs, that they can be made to pull them down. So it's different. At least with a wind farm, you pull it down. There's nobody put out of a home. With the housing, people have to be put out. That is a very serious thing. Now, under the rules of accounting for private companies, they have to report if they have a wind farm or anything which is subject to an EU judgment that's adverse. They have to report that to their shareholders, and they're refusing to do it, and the financial regulator is refusing to force them. But that's another day. They could be sued over that. They're not telling their shareholders, they're not being honest in their accounts that this case lies. The auditors should look for that going concern and say, this wind farm has to be pulled down according to EU law, and say it's not a going concern. They don't want to do it, but that's the law. But that's another day's work. If they go ahead with their act in Dublin and it's not challenged, and at some stage in the future they build houses down in Senator Lombard's Cork area, and those are under a government plan or programme, any person can challenge it. Anyone, could be a billionaire from China, can challenge it. He might want to get into the building industry in Cork. So he goes into court, he says, these houses were built without compliance with EU law. And the next thing, it goes to the court in Dublin, the High Court, and the High Court says, I don't think so now. I don't think we'll go down after do that. So they'll say no. He'll go to the Court of Appeal. No, we can't be at this old thing now. We can't be doing this. And the next thing is it'll go on to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is in the situation of either agreeing with him or saying no, and that brings him in under a constitutional crisis with the European Union. And how is that going to go? What's the European Commission going to do if it can be? This is part of the law and the constitution of the EU. So the European Court of Justice will rule they have to be pulled down. So they have to go and bulldoze the whole lot. What are they going to do with the people? And then when it's bulldozed, the Chinese fella can start up and he can build them again. But he'll do that as he makes sure the SCA is done. This is the harsh reality of the situation. This is the harsh reality of it. Like it or lump it. And you think you can get by it, Senator Lombard. The Irish government went over to Europe about the Derrybrine wind farm and got them to stop fining them for having it there, and said they'll take it down eventually. But that was the EU Commission took that case against the Irish government in relation to the Derrybrine wind farm. So they could make a deal with the Commission not to force the fine. But if some person living beside that or living in Honolulu takes a case against the Derrybrine wind farm, they can order it be pulled down. It's built without planning permission. It's already the law. They can force it to be pulled down. And there's nothing the government can do, only hum and haw. That's the grim reality. It is hugely corrupt to try to persist with building houses for human beings to live in, no matter who they are, and let them settle there and all, which is grossly against the law of the European Union, which is the primary source of law in the Republic of Ireland. That's the way it is. And in actual fact, I'm being cruel to be kind, because by pointing out this, there is a possibility the government might be forced to do the SCA properly. And if they do it properly for housing, it shouldn't be a problem as such. It'll delay it a bit, it shouldn't be a problem. But the fact of the matter is, instead of whinging about Cavan farmers with cows objecting from miles away, Senator Lombard, Tim Lombard, should have been getting the SCA done for at least whatever part of the directive he wanted, like housing. He should have been at this 2 years ago. He should have his report through. It should be through the courts and through everything and all done and ready to go ahead. And then he can make amendments to it and get work on the way on what's already granted and what's already approved, and do the EIA for that and the planning permission. That's the way the law is drafted. Whether he likes it or not, that's it. He's going to try and burst through that. He's going to try and drive a coach and four through it. He's not going to succeed because there's so much at stake. He's not going to succeed. He might as well go back now and do it right. And they should, in actual fact, involve myself and my friend Mr. Pat Swords in the process. We're ready to help and assist. We are not against housing at all. I don't want to see housing denied. But you can't do what you're doing. An individual builder can build a housing estate. If it's a big one, he needs an EIA. But if it's under government sanction, if there's government funds allocated to it, and this will be proved in the case Friends of the Irish Environment, if there's government funds allocated to it, it's a government plan or programme for housing, and you must comply with the law for that. And if you don't, it's forevermore illegal. It's unlawful. And unless Ireland leaves the EU, or it breaks up, or it becomes no longer the law, which is unlikely, then these houses are being occupied and sold, and maybe people getting mortgages to buy them, and they think that they're legal, when in fact they're illegal. The whole lot can be pulled down. That is the law, Senator Lombard. Whether you like it or whether you don't like it, that's the hard law. You go and do the thing right, or you don't do it at all. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and feel free to comment underneath. Give me a thumbs down if you don't approve. It doesn't matter, folks, whether you approve or not. I'm not turning on this. That's the way it is, and none of us are. We're not going to have it. We have these crowd in a corner, and we're not going to let them out. They're corrupt. This is corruption. They think they're going to take my rights under the Constitution here in Ireland and the law of the EU, which I voted for, away from me without a fight. You got another thing coming, Senator Lombard. You got another thing coming. Thumbs up or a thumbs down. We'll see you back for something again. Thank you.